right there. We start the recording, and we're in chapter 8 of Revelation. All right. Are there any questions from last week or week before? Any questions we've got before we get started in the lesson at all? I tell you, I have had that first paragraph that we went over last week on my mind this whole week, and it was really that half an hour of silence that has just been I've just been thinking about that over and over again. The the gravity of of that silence, and I'd never really thought about it. I've read past it a couple of times, but it was that reading that I believe it was Heiser brought it up. I believe it was. You remember in the first paragraph we've opened the six seals in the seventh in the sixth and seventh chapter, and in the seventh chapter we looked at those two groups of people, the 144,000 from the tribes of Israel that are here on the earth, and then we looked the next at that great cloud of witnesses that are in heaven, this great multitude of people that are from every tribe and every nation that are up in heaven that have come through this tribulation. Um, and then the angel then, or the lamb then in chapter 8 opens that seventh seal. So at this point now the scroll is open, and the contents can be read, and right after he opens that seventh seal is when the when the silence went in heaven. And we talked about, what was it, five different ideas of what that silence was about, and some of them, pretty good. But I think that the last one that we talked about, the realization of the heavenly host, and this is what the realization of the heavenly host, of the magnitude of what they're about. They are about to witness, much less us here on earth, but they're about to witness that God is just about to undo the creation, undo the entire creation that he created. And just the gravity of that sight, to undo the creation, is just, it takes my breath away, that even the angels are aghast at the magnitude of what's about to happen. But that's where we stand now. The seventh seal has been opened, and now we are remember, we're in a courtroom. We're in the throne room of God, and we are about to now begin the final judgment. The final judgment. And the judgment begins now that the scroll is opened and the evidence has been presented. Now we start in the 6th verse of chapter 8. Now the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared to blow them. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and those were thrown from the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it was made bitter. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, likewise a third of the night. And then I looked and heard an eagle cry with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead, "Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow." The first four trumpets seem to be related because we go through them one after the other, and then there's an interlude where this eagle comes by with a cry. And what one of the things that you notice that would go over and over and over again in these first four trumpets? What do you hear over and over and over again? You hear it over and over. What was it?
I said destruction.
It is destruction over and over, but listen to it. A third, a third, a third, a third, a third. You remember them? It
Yeah.
keeps repeating a third, a third, a third, and I've wondered why. And I've heard, well, the triune God, that yeah, okay, but that's just I'm not I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that has to do anything with it. But let's go back and try and figure out what's going on here. So we have these seven angels, and we talked about them last week. Uh, we get the seven angels mentioned. Uh, there's one theory that these are the guardian angels of the churches, but that would be
Norm,
yes,
do you remember it was a third of the angels followed Satan?
right. We've had a third before. We've heard a third before in Revelation. A third of the stars, the angels, were swept down. So there's thirds all over the book of Revelation. So we kind of want to keep that in the back of our mind. Like I said, I'm not real convinced about the triune God, and deals in thirds. That just okay, that's fine, but is there something more to it? I don't know. We'll see if we can find out. But yeah, a third, a third, a third. You're going to hear it over and over. We still got some more thirds coming up. But the seven angels, there's one mention of the seven angels um, that maybe they are related to the seven angels that are the guardians of the churches, but that one is not. That one doesn't make a whole lot of sense because these seven angels are bringing about judgment. I mean, this is like I think it was Bonnie said. This is destruction. This is destruction that we're looking at over and over again. A third of the grass is gone. A third of the waters is gone. A third of the shipping. Third destruction all over. But the guardian angels of the churches, that they are the guardians of the churches. They're busy. They've got they've got responsibility in guarding the churches. So I don't think the explanation of the seven angels as the guardians of the churches is a good is a good explanation. And I'm just not real sure if there is a definite a definite relation to any other thing that we can see other than there is a slight there's a slight hint. Now as we're going through these trumpets, what when you read the destruction that we're seeing, the first trumpet, they're followed by hail and fire and mixed with blood, and those are thrown upon the earth, and a third of the earth was born up. So hail and fire. The second trumpet was a great mountain burning with fire thrown into the thrown into the sea, and the third trumpet was a great star that caused the water to be bitter. Um, and the fourth trumpet, the sun and moon were struck, and there was darkness. A third of the day was gone. If you look at that, is that reminding you of something else that has to do with Israel? Do all those remind us of something that has gone on in Israel's history?
The plagues.
The
Was it the
plagues.
plagues of
So,
Egypt?
the plagues of Egypt. Sounds a whole lot like that, doesn't it? So these angels are bringing about the same kind of destruction, plagues, that God used in judgment against Egypt. So we're now dealing with something that, in the mind of Israel, means something. We're talking about a judgment of, in the case of Israel, in the case of Egypt, a judgment on a nation that persecuting persecuting Israel. So we're this is the same. Now we're in a not just a judgment on the on these seas, and we're talking about a judgment on a nation, and we're gonna change our scope a little bit. What brought about the judgment on the nations, on Egypt? What was the final judgment on Egypt, and what brought it about? You remember? The final judgment. And I'm trying to find my verse. So if you can remember, the final judgment on Egypt. The final judgment on Egypt was
The death angel won it.
yeah, the final judgment on Egypt was brought about by the destroying angel,
The
right?
firstborns.
The firstborn was brought
Mm-hmm.
about by the destroying angel. Well, I think we're on to something, because the in the 78th Psalm, when you go down to about the 42nd verse, I think is a good place to start. The the um, the 78th Psalm, if you look at it, is about is basically a very abbreviated history of Israel. And when you get down to about the 42nd verse, you start getting around the it looks like the history at Egypt. So reading in the 42nd verse, they do not remember his power, or the day when he redeemed them from the foe, when he performed his signs in Egypt, and his marvels in the fields of Zohan. He turned their rivers to blood, so that they could not drink of their streams. And he sent among them swarms of flies, which devoured them, and frogs, which destroyed them. He gave their crops to the destroying locusts, and the fruit of their labor to the locusts. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamores with frost. He gave over the cattle to hail, and their flocks to thunderbolts. He let loose on them his burning anger, wrath, indignation, and distress, a company of destroying angels. He made a path for his anger. He did not spare them from death. He gave their lives over to the plague. He struck down every firstborn in Egypt, the firstfruits of their strength, to the tents of Ham. And then he led out his people like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. He led them to safety, so that they were not afraid, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. Sounds similar to what we're looking at, that this company of destroying angels is bringing upon somebody. We're not told yet. We're just told general destruction is upon the earth. We're told this general destruction is on the earth.
Third.
A third. A third of the earth. A third of the earth. So we look around and say, okay, a third seems to be really important. So if we start looking around, and there's no way that anybody can remember this, and I didn't even remember it. I looked, it was Heiser that brought it up. But if we look in Zechariah, so we're going to well, let's do Ezekiel first, since I'm right there. In the 5th chapter of Ezekiel, let's see what we got in here that we can find. 5th chapter of Ezekiel is talking about the destruction that is coming upon Jerusalem. Remember, Ezekiel is right here in the Babylonian exile time, but Ezekiel is bringing a word of destruction also. And you, O son of man, take a sharp sword, use it as a barber's razor, and pass it over your head and your beard. Then take balances for weight and divide the hair. A third part you shall burn in the fire in the midst of the city. Then the days of the siege, when the days of the siege are completed. And a third part you shall take and strike with the sword all around the city. And a third part you will scatter to the wind. And I will unsheath the sword after them, and you shall take from these a small number and bind them in the skirts of your robe. And all of these again you shall take some and cast them into the midst of the fire and burn them in the fire. From there a fire will come out to all the house of Israel. So we have a third again, a third of his beard, a third of his beard, and a third of his beard, talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. So there's something about the thirds and destruction that God is echoing again and again and again. And we still don't have a good answer. Now, let's see if I can find Zechariah. Habakkuk, no, that's not it.
By the way,
Yes.
it does say in verse 11 of Ezekiel, he says, surely because thou hast defiled my sanctuary with all thy detestable things and with all thine abominations, therefore I will diminish thee. Neither shall mine eye spare, neither will I have pity. And so I was like looking at that was why I came up with that. That's why I had that idea that it may be the part of the silence that's in heaven is that he announces himself as God sitting in the temple.
There is that silence. That silence, I think, is more important than I know I have given it credit for.
And I think that's why judgment's coming.
To silence, number one, the four guardians that are constantly saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. They constantly say that, and yet they fall silent. That is devastating, that even they fall silent with the upcoming judgment. Just like Jeff said, the upcoming judgment. So don't forget that silence. Don't forget that silence. So a third in Zechariah, we've got the 13th chapter here. And listen to this one. 13th chapter of Zechariah. Let's start at the 7th verse. It says, awake, O soul, O sword, against my shepherd, against the man who stands next to me, declares the Lord of hosts. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. Remember, we've heard this one before. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones. In the whole land, declares the earth, 2/3 will be cut off and perish. 1/3 shall be left alive. And I will put this third to the fire and refine them as one refines silver, and test them as gold is tested. They will call upon my name, and I will answer them, and I will say, they are my people. And they will say, the Lord, Yehovah, is my God. That sounds pretty pointed. 2/3 will be cut off, and 1/3 will be left alive. The thirds have some importance here. We're talking about a third being destroyed, but we're also talking about a third being saved. A third of the earth, a third of the creation is being destroyed, burned, flooded, just destroyed. But a third of the people will be saved. I think we're on to something now. I think we're on to something. So I think the thirds
Well,
are
you
coming.
you just said a third will die and then a third will be saved. Where's
That's
the
what
other third?
Zechariah says.
Uh,
And he's talking about, listen, he's strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones. In the whole land, declares the Lord, in the whole earth, 2/3 will be cut off and perish. This is strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. This is the shepherd is, we know who the shepherd is, and the shepherd was struck, and the sheep were scattered. Remember, the apostles, the disciples, everybody took off running when Jesus was struck, and 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 God turned his hand against those that scattered, but he saved those that called upon the name of the Lord. He saved a third. And this obviously is now coming back in Revelation when we're talking about who is going to be saved. Who is going to be saved? So, let me ask you this. We've got destruction coming, a destruction that even the host of heaven have held their breath on, that even the guardians of the throne and the host of heaven that are singing glory to God in the highest, even they fell silent. And we've seen 4 trumpets blown, 4 trumpets, and then we stop. 4 trumpets and a stop. So this is something that is just, it's breathtaking. It's breathtaking, and we're getting all kinds of signals here of a massive judgment coming. The judgment on Egypt was destroyed the most powerful nation at that time on earth. Egypt did not recover from the destruction brought not only from the destruction of the killing of the firstborn of everything, cattle too, that death, but the entire army of Egypt was destroyed when they tried to follow the Israelites across the Red Sea. Egypt did not recover for hundreds of years from that destruction. And now, and this is common, when we see this, that's the first thing that comes into not only their mind, for sure that comes into their mind, but it comes into ours too, because we know the stories. We know the stories of the destruction of Egypt. So it comes into our mind, and now we are starting to get a picture of what is coming. what is coming, what the host of heaven saw in that scroll. We're starting to get the picture because we're reading through this as if we haven't read it before. And we're starting to get a picture of this is going to be really bad. But in addition to that, and you know, it's always important for us to remember the grace of God in the background. The grace of God is always in the background. The non-believers, the more liberal Christians say, oh, the Old Testament is horrible because there's such death and destruction. Well, here's death and destruction in the New Testament. You got nothing to say about this too? But even in that death and destruction, look at what Zechariah tells us. A third will be saved. That call on God's name, a third will be saved. No matter what destruction is brought, those that call upon the name of the Lord are saved. We've already seen a multitude that has been saved, not from death. They were killed in the tribulation. They were killed in the tribulation, but God saved them. God took them to himself, and now they are a great multitude waiting for God to execute judgment on the people that kill them. Remember those that are under the throne back in chapter 4. Those souls that were martyred, that had their robes white. They're under the throne, under the altar. They're under the altar protected by God, waiting for God to execute judgment on the people that abuse them. So no matter what destruction we've got here, God's grace is waiting in the wings, always waiting to protect his people. And by protect doesn't necessarily mean it's going to protect you from death, but you are protected. You go to be with him. That's more than any kind of protection from being killed than we deserve. But he's always there with that protection for his people. So here we sit. We've had the 4 trumpets blown, and now we've got a break. We've got a break here. So we've got to figure out what's going on. The sun and the moon. I want to bring out. We've noticed. We noticed in the first chapter, looking back, we've already said this looks like the plagues that hit Egypt. But when we noted in that first chapter, and going back up to there, after the 7 angels are given their trumpets, there's another angel that came and stood by the altar with a golden censer. This is up in verse 3. And he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth, and there were peals of thunder, rumbling, and flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. When we read this last week, we said, man, that sounds like Sinai. That sounds like Sinai. Because in Sinai, remember, the people were not allowed to come on the mountain because God himself was coming on the mountain. And this was thunder, fire, smoke, and flashes of lightning when God came upon the mountain. We're seeing the same thing now. So this sounds like since the angel is taking the incense from the altar in heaven, and throwing it down to the earth with the same kind of thing we heard at Sinai when God came, it sounds like God is preparing to come again to the earth with the same type of fanfare that he came in Sinai, doesn't it? It sounds like this fire, smoke, and earthquakes happen when God comes in for something important. At Sinai,
He
go.
came down to give the law. Now he's coming to execute the justice of the law.
Aha! He came.
What'd you say?
Go ahead, Jeff.
What'd you say?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I said he came down first to give the law. Now he's coming down to execute the justice of the law.
Okay. Gotcha.
Sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? And it sounds like that maybe this angel that was with the seven trumpets here, this same angel might have done exactly the same thing to prepare Sinai for God, going to the altar in heaven, taking the burning coals and incense and throwing it down on Sinai to prepare that for the presence of God. Sounds like it might have been the same thing. So we are prepared, the angel prepared for the giving of the law at Sinai. This same angel, sounds like to me, is preparing for justice to come. For justice. For justice not only for these people that God promised justice to that were under the altar, but also the justice and the judgment on the earth that the law is going to bring. Sounds pretty convincing to me. So we've got the four trumpets now that are announcing the same type of judgment on the earth that we had in Egypt. Now it looks like we've halted for a minute, and John looks up and sees an eagle. And the eagle is saying, "Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow." We've got three trumpets left. And this eagle that is coming down, and the eagle is not is a carrion bird, remember? Anytime you get in the Old Testament, you hear about the gathering of the crows and the hawks and the eagles before a great battle, because they know that a meal is coming after the battle. You hear that over and over in the Old Testament. The coming of the birds of prey announce a great slaughter. Well, I think that's what we've got here. And not only are we seeing eagles, which is a harbinger of this coming slaughter, but the eagle is telling them, if you think that was bad, those four trumpets, these three coming are going to be something else. So that's where we are. Now, tell me something that we haven't seen yet. We've got these judgments. We've even got judgments. There are three main things in Revelation that everybody talks about, and we haven't heard a peep out of any of them yet. Has anybody got a guess of what they are? We haven't heard a peep out of one of these three things.
Is Antichrist one of them?
Antichrist. We haven't had a peep out of the Antichrist yet. What else? 1,000 years?
Yeah.
We haven't heard a thing about the millennium. And one more
Right.
thing, we haven't heard anything about the rapture either. Now, we kind of, chapter 4, kind of people are saying, no, 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 we got a little rapture here in chapter 4. But when you look, the in chapter 4, the very start of it, after this, I, John, looked and beheld a door opening in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come up here, and I'll show you what must take place after this." There are a lot of people that say that is the millennium. However, look at that next verse.
That's the right. That's what we think it's the
Or
rapture.
at the rapture. But look
Yeah.
at the next verse. At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne in heaven. So, okay, you might call that, but John is saying that he was in the Spirit and went up to heaven.
But doesn't John also represent the church?
Maybe. Maybe, but we don't get that really. I mean, we infer it, but there's no
We
real.
don't hear anything really much of the church anymore after that chapter.
Right. So,
All the letters before it were all talking about churches. Then after that, you don't
Yeah.
hear about it no more.
Yeah.
yep. So, yeah, we kind of hear a little bit. The rapture is not really that hard. We don't have any real hard evidence,
Well, there's one evidence in there.
but
Voice like a trumpet.
a voice like a trumpet, right?
Uh-huh.
So the rapture, yeah, we kind of get a little, but it's not, it's not, there it is. So, yeah, the rapture, yeah, maybe, but definitely,
And the man of lawlessness can't come until after the Holy Spirit's taken out of the world.
yeah,
And so the Holy Spirit is in us. And so after we're raptured, that's when the Antichrist comes.
right.
I can't quote the verses, but I think it's a First
So
Thessalonians.
what we've got,
Second.
what we've got so far is basically we've had evidence presented to us in the forms of the 7 letters of the churches about the persecution of believers, whether they were Jewish or whether they were Gentile. They are believers. They are the ecclesia, the called out ones. The persecution of them by the 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 principalities and powers, the nations. We have a persecuted bunch of 144,000 from the tribes of Israel on the earth. We have this multitude, this cloud of witnesses that was under the altar being protected and promised judgment and promised that they would be avenged. And now we've had the judgment start. And whether it's going to proceed one by one, the trumpets are obviously one by one, but we've got other judgments coming too. So this is kind of building now. And chapter 9, things are going to start happening fast. So we're about at the end of the time. Chapter 9, the fifth angel is going to blow his trumpet, and things are going to happen. I need to go over and read through those next 2, because that's where we're going to start seeing things that remind us of a lot of what we've been taught in the past. We're going to look at them carefully. So we'll start at chapter 9 with the 5th angel and the 5th trumpet, where things start coming out of the heavens next week. Any questions before we before
Are
we
you saying do 9 and 10? You said the next two.
we're gonna start chapter 9. We ain't gonna get through chapter 9 all next week, but we will start chapter 9, and I'm gonna put the stuff up for chapter 10. So
Oh, okay.
if you're reading ahead, I'll post the links to chapter 10. And if you're looking at Heiser's site and Tom's site, you can see the references there. So you don't need me to really post them; they're already there. So if you want to listen ahead, we'll be on chapter 10, but probably not next week. 9 is going to take us a bit because we
I
got
have a question, Norm.
yes.
You know how you send us the email?
Uh-huh.
We can look up Tom Bradford or whatever in that whole list you send.
Yeah.
Are you still sending that to Lori?
Uh, yes. I haven't taken anybody off of my email list, so I'm
Okay.
she should be getting it. Yeah, if she got them in the past, she should still be getting them.
I'm gonna ask her if she's looking at them.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell her to listen to them. They're good. They're good lessons. They're good lessons. Um, any other questions?
Very good, Norm.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you, Norm. It was good.
Yeah, we're
I do have a question.
we're getting deep quick.
I do have a question, but I don't have time for a
No,
song.
go-
Yeah, you got 2
no,
minutes.
go ahead.
So
Is it
write
Hurry
it,
up.
write the
Do
question
it.
down and bring it up next week first thing.
All right.
Good lesson, Norm.
Yeah,
Enjoy it.
really good lesson.
Thanks,
Good,
guys.
Norm. Thank you, Norm.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night,
Have a good
y'all.
Have a
week.
great
Have a
week.
good week.
God bless
Bye
y'all.
bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.